On this episode of Big Sky Now, we talk about some NFL players that were former Big Sky players joining together on one team. Next, we dive into Week 11, where we saw the whole slate of games last Saturday, with Montana barely winning and Montana State getting a huge victory over Weber State. And next, we dive into Week 12, where we have a huge matchup in Bozeman as UC Davis travels down to get a win over the Bobcats. And if they do, it could be a season-changing victory. Before we start, I'd like to give a thank you to M&C Tires for sponsoring this podcast. Let's not waste any time and get right to it. Welcome back, everyone. My name is Luke Schmit, and I am the host of the Big Sky Now podcast. Joining me today is Daily Interlake sports editor Fritz Neighbor, and joining me also on the panel today is Coeur d'Alene Press sports editor Mark Nelke and Columbia Basin Herald sports reporter Mike Maynard. Guys, before we get into a little bit of Week 11 and Week 12, just wanted to touch a little bit on some NFL really quick. If you didn't see last week, former Weber State star Rashid Shaheed was traded to the Seahawks, so now it's the Seattle Big Sky Seahawks as they now have Eastern Washington Cooper Kupp, Rashid Shaheed, like I just said, and Montana State's Ty Okada. So thought that's really cool. It's a team, if you're looking to watch in the NFL and you love Big Sky football, there's definitely a bunch of players there now, and just exciting overall to watch that team. And also wanted to share some news about Montana State alum Alex Singleton. He had a cancerous tumor removed after their win against the Raiders on Thursday. So I just wanted to wish the Bronco a speedy recovery. He should be back soon, but just wishing Alex the best, and we hope to see him back on the field. But let's talk about some Big Sky football, guys. We are in Week 11, and we have to jump to the first game that was a near heart attack for Grizz fans as Montana escapes at the last second over Eastern Washington. The quarterback, Jake Shackle, played incredible until the final play when he fumbled the snap on the supposed to be spike. Let's jump to someone who was at the game. Let's go to Fritz first. Fritz, you were there. Walk me through what you took away from that one.
Well, I think a couple years ago, maybe Mark will remember this, the Grizz went down and got beat pretty soundly at Northern Arizona, and I mentioned that every year it seems like Bobby Houck and his team has a clunker, and I think that was their clunker. That was just this year's model. They got off to a great start. They're out 22-0. Great one-handed catch by Corbin Hendricks. Everything's clicking. Seems like it's going to be a laugher, and then it just got slowed down, and the Grizz crowd didn't have much to really cheer for. I thought maybe the offense became really predictable. I thought the defense, which was exposed a little bit, it's designed, the 3-3-5 is really tough on the run, but you can find some open spots if you have time in the passing game. And clearly Jake Skakel had some time because he threw for 451. Another freshman quarterback. He had that freshman quarterback to another successful onside kick. And I was thinking of Vernon Adams in 2012. I was thinking last year when the Grizzlies escaped with a 3-point win. And, with a minute left, they got down inside the 5 and then goofed up the exchange. So there's a lot of offensive talent on the Grizzly side. They've been very balanced. And while they've been balanced, they have a guy who's gone over 1,000 yards for second straight year, Eli Gilman. But through last week, he had a quarterback in Ayat that had the most passing yards in the FCS. So I'm not sure what happened, but I do know that Bobby mentioned post-game that how Eastern was bringing down a safety and or a corner to stop their run. And it seemed like instead of maybe taking what was open or what was available, they kept trying to solve that puzzle while the league kept getting smaller and smaller. And, win's a win. Bobby Houck often says, it's, winning's hard, losing's easy. Just ask the team across in the other locker room. But boy, that was a narrow escape, only topped by maybe the soccer game yesterday over at South Campus Stadium, which was another crazy ending too. So I'll chalk it up as that being their clunker for 2025.
A win is a win, Fritz. You said it best. And yes, shout out to the Montana girls soccer team, narrowly beating Weber State in a crazy finish. But I'm going to switch it over here to Mike. We got to talk about freshman Jake Shackle. How promising is this, Mike, for Eastern fans? Like Fritz said, about 450 yards, 2 touchdowns. Just overall, great quarterback play, and I was really impressed with his performance on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. Can really push the ball downfield. He threw 63 times, so I mean, he never better put up some high numbers in that case. But finished with a 68% completion percentage. I think for a freshman, that's pretty solid completion percentage there. And if he can just kind of build off of that going forward, they have looks like they have a pretty promising future at that quarterback position for the next couple of years to come if they can hang on to him and whatnot. Just seems like there's a lot of things working against him. Through 2 picks, which I imagine probably came back to bite him later, and then sacked 8 times. Got to keep him upright to get the win. But regardless, they still found a way to be in a position to where they could pull off a comeback win, and just didn't go their way. Sounds like quite a heartbreaker. But yeah, I think even going forward for the rest of the season, when they're looking at Nate Bell or Jared Taylor as well. I don't know the current status of their injury situations, but you have to imagine that makes for an interesting competition in practice now that everybody's kind of had a moment to shine, and all of them bring something to the table. Nate Bell has an incredible ability to escape the pocket. Jake Shackle can just absolutely rip it downfield. So it'll be interesting to see where they go from here with that.
Definitely, Mike. And it seems like Eastern trends to have a great success when passing the ball, especially playing Missoula. I think maybe Bobby had a comment on the fact that, they really start opening the passing game, especially with the Grizz defense. And, when we talk about Montana State and Montana here soon, I think that's a big concern for Grizz fans right now is how the secondary looks. Obviously, it's a new defense from last year, and they're playing good. And then, second half, they're outscored. They're still holding to 10 points. So I think we're going to monitor that, especially here in the next 2 weeks. But we got to get to our next game here. Let's go to Mark. Mark, Fritz's Bengals win second game in a row with a road win at Cal Poly. Let's hear your thoughts on that one.
Okay, I have some thoughts on that. Well, first, I wanted to weigh in really quickly on the Eastern Grizz game. What a terrible way for Eastern to lose after all that they did to come back and come down to the 5-yard line, and then they can't handle the snap from center, so they can spike it. I remember, I think it happened in a 49er game a few years ago against, I think, the Falcons, where they were trying to spike it and they lost it and then they fumbled it and the game was over. So what a terrible way. And it kind of adds to the lore of Washington Grizz Stadium that maybe Fritz could do 5 or 10 or an hour someday on crazy things that have happened in that building that have gone the Grizz way, So anyway, maybe we'll do that in the postseason or something. But anyway, talking about Idaho State, they kind of took care of business. They were in the rare position of being a favorite and expected to win, and they did win. They got off to a 14-0 lead and just kind of played. I think after that, they kind of played to not protect the lead, but just kind of played as you would play as a team that's ahead, and playing to kind of protect the football a little bit, not be too as daring as they can be, which is kind of hard for them to do because they throw it all the time. So Jordan Cook, 275 yards and a touchdown. He also actually ran the ball a few times out of the read option and stuff, which they hadn't done much. And so that was something that seemed like that confused wherever they were playing. Cal Poly, yeah. I've watched too many games lately. I'm sorry. But yeah, they had like somebody came in on a blitz and ran right by him, and he just ran right by the guy that blitzed and got like 20 yards and stuff like that. So I would say that was just impressive to win a game that they were supposed to win. And I would also throw in a little bit about Cal Poly, their quarterback, Ty Deffenbach. I was impressed with him. He's a big, tall kid, can run a little bit, can sling it. And so there's they got a good future. This day and age, if he sticks around. I mean, everything's a year-to-year thing. Just because they have eligibility left at the school they're at doesn't mean that's where they're going to return to. So anyway, good win for Idaho State. And we'll talk a little bit about them more later when we talk about their next game.
It was a good win for the Bengals. And as we've kind of seen, they have the roller coaster effect where they beat some better teams than some think, and then they, trend to lose on some games they should win. So it was good to see Idaho State take care of business at home. And like you said about Diffenbach, I remember watching him play the Grizz this year, and I was impressed as well. So in the future, that's someone definitely to look out for in the Big Sky Conference at quarterback, especially if he stays also. Let's go to our next game. Montana State rolled over Weber State. And after the Wildcats lost this week, they actually fired their coach, Mickey Mental, who went 3-7 this season and 13-20 overall in 3 years. Their offensive line coach, Brent Myers, has been named the interim head coach going forward for the next 2 games. Fritz, when we're talking about the Cats, what is the most impressive side of the ball or position group maybe to you in this dominant win or you've seen in the last couple of weeks from Montana State?
Well, I can't really pick one. It seems like the offense is clicking. This week it wasn't Adam Jones, but Julius Davis was really on fire running the ball. Didn't realize he hadn't had a run longer than 52 yards until he tore off that 52-yarder, which you got a great block from JT Reed, who was in Spokane this summer for the Big Sky kickoff, and made a great little jump cut behind, and off he went to the races. And they're just running the ball at will. He had the same great start against Weber State that the Grizz did the week before, but the difference was that the Cats just kept firing. 66 points. That's a lot of points for anybody, and including the Cats. A lot of points for that stadium. They just seem like firing on every single cylinder. Rocky Lancioni has been a great local find from Bozeman High to the Cats, playing great tight end. Seems like he catches a touchdown every week. Tight ends are always open, I guess. They punted the first time they had the ball on Saturday, and then they scored their next 9 possessions. And the other thing I wanted to add was Caden Dowler had, I think, an interception and a fumble recovery at safety. He's been fought injuries off and on, but he's been playing great when he's in there. He's obviously the brother of Taco Deller, who plays on the other side and on special teams. And Caden is the Big Sky Defensive Player of the Week, which is a cool deal. And the Bobcats just look like pretty unstoppable. I think they even got a first place vote this week in the Stats Perform poll, stealing one away from the hated and respected NDSU Bison.
And they deserve it, Fritz. Honestly, Montana State, since the first couple games of the season, they played really good teams. They lost to. They've been rolling, and that rushing attack is no joke. Throwing the ball, they don't really need to versus Weber. They just controlled the clock, and they stay undefeated in the Big Sky. We'll talk some Cat-Griz here soon towards the end of the episode. That game's going to be highly anticipated, but Montana State has one big step before that with UC Davis coming to town. Speaking of UC Davis, let's jump back to Mark. Idaho falls to the Aggies, and they were not able to get back on track. What did the Vandals do, you think, in this game, Mark, that wasn't able to successfully pull out the win?
More kind of what they didn't do. They couldn't stop UC Davis. I mean, we know they have a good offense, but Idaho is a pretty good defense, but they couldn't stop UC Davis. Pinnock throws for 248. He only had 6 incompletions, threw for 3 touchdowns, ran for 1. They kind of got greedy a few times and tried to add with the lead and threw some passes maybe they shouldn't have, and he had a couple interceptions. Otherwise, if they taken better care of the ball, it could have been 42-7 or something like that. But they gave it back to Idaho a couple times to kind of give them a chance to feel good about themselves and feel like they could get back in the game, and they kind of did, but not really. Wood was he threw for 297, but they were trailing most of the game. So you're going, a lot of times defenses are going to let you get a few passing yards that way. So I wouldn't read too much into that. That was nice. One bright spot for Idaho is Michael Graves. He'd been around for a few years. He was injured in fall camp, caught a couple touchdown passes. That was kind of a bright spot for Idaho. But on the other hand, as Thomas Ford mentioned, they were 1 of 11 on 3rd down and 2 of 6 on 4th down. So that was a problem. And for UC Davis, who lost at home to Idaho State last week, good bounce back going into their real easy game this week that we'll talk about later.
And Caden Pinnock, definitely better performance than he had the previous week, like you said, against Idaho State. 21 for 27, so far more efficient. And the one thing that is concerning is he threw 2 interceptions again. So forcing the ball is something he's not going to be able to do against Montana State. I think if they have to pull that win out, they're going to have to play a pretty darn good game of football, almost perfect, because if you turn the ball over and you're down versus the Bobcats and they're rushing the way they are, it won't be a good omen for them. But yeah, good win for UC Davis. They get back on track, and Idaho has another matchup this week. We'll talk soon where, I think they're going to be able to compete and get back, as they've kind of had an up and down season. Mike, we have 2 blowout games. We can briefly touch on these, and we'll go right into week 12. If you want to have any words about Sacramento State, they won 52-24 against Portland State. So yeah, whatever you wanted to go forward and say there.
Yeah, 3 highlights from that game. 1, they continue to dominate in the run. Rodney Hammond breaking out with 193 total gains, net 191, 2 touchdowns. And the second highlight, Cardell Williams, 8 for 11, 188 yards and 2 touchdowns. For such a low passing rate, I feel like it's pretty high passing yards number, pretty efficient. Putting up 2 touchdowns in that aspect as well. And then the defense getting after Portland State's quarterbacks with a total 6 sacks over the course of the game. So, yeah, it's no wonder they kind of dominated that. They kind of imposed their will. It seems like they were very clearly the more physical team.
They were the more physical team. And speaking of Northern Colorado, actually, it's great to see. I had an interview at the beginning of the season with Peter Costelli. He actually played in this game. He had 3 for 5, 29 passing yards. They gave him a couple handoffs or potentially quarterback carries for 19 yards. So just wanted to give shout out to Costelli for getting back on the field. I'll wrap up our last game here really quick. The Battle of the Northerns, Northern Arizona, or excuse me, I should have said it before. Northern Arizona game. I wanted to say Peter Costelli got back. But to sum it up, Seth Cromwell had 2 of the Northern Arizona 5 rushing touchdowns. Colby Castis, 100-yard kickoff return. So they take care of it. I thought Northern Colorado this season has played a lot better, and they've been a promising team. But overall, I think Northern Arizona really woke up with a couple conference losses. And now Pennington, they got to win out to have a chance to make the playoffs, and we will see if they can do that. But let's jump into week 12. I have some really exciting games to talk to you guys about here. We'll get a couple out of the way before we go into the big game of the week at the end. I wanted to save the best for last. Fritz, let's hear your thoughts on Montana's final road game. They're going to Portland State, who's only won 1 game.
Yeah, Bruce Barnum's the Portland State Vikings. I'm a big fan of Bruce, and I'm a big fan of that trip, especially when it winds up at what we used to call PGE Park, and now it's Providence Park, I think, home of the Timbers. And Portland State gets to play in their old stadium. I think we call it Civic Stadium even before that. I'm that old. So I'm sorry to miss that trip. It holds 25,000. That place does. I've never seen it more than half full for a Grizz game, but it still gets loud. I think it's worth noting that last year's game, even though Portland State was the underdog, they led 3-0 at halftime at Washington Grizzlies Stadium before losing 28-17. I think it's notable that, like last week, this week, one of the opponent's best players, in this case Portland State, Peyton Wing, has transferred to Montana. Last week it was Michael Wortham. This week it's Peyton Wing playing linebacker for the Grizz against his former team. I think the Grizz are the overdog again, and I don't think Portland State has quite the past history against the Grizz that the Eastern Eagles do, which, Mark and I probably remember Dick Zorns, and it's burned in my memory, Dick Zorns blowing kisses to the crowd at Washington Grizzlies Stadium in 1990. And the Grizz were number 2 that year and lost at home. Gave up 3 touchdowns in the span of 5 minutes and lost. And nobody was happier than Dick Zorns, the old Eastern coach. So There's a few players that I like. I won't make my Office Space joke again this week because I screwed it up last time. But Sagapolatele, the linebacker, the quarterback who's pressing the action for Portland State, he's got just 4 TDs against 12 interceptions. That's not a good sign. The other thing is Mouse in the house, Mouse Davis, who is 93 and is one of the creators of the run and shoot, if not the man who created it, and created a lot of it at Portland State and for Portland State. He'll be at that game Saturday. So Vikings have a lot to play for. It's a less home game in their old stadium. I just don't think they have the horses, minus Peyton Wing, to deal with the Grizz.
Like you said, Fritz, Peyton Wing will return to his old team. I think for Montana, just a business trip, get this job done. You have the game of the season next week. Try and stay healthy, get out to a manageable lead, control the clock. Hopefully nobody is injured in this one. But like you said, I don't think they have the horses in this fight, or this race, I should say, excuse me. Let's go back to Mark here. Mark, Idaho faces the Hornets on the road this week. Sacramento State starting to play some better football at the right time. I can't lie, even though they will be making the FBS power jump soon. What interests you in this matchup?
Well, we'll get to them in a second, but Fritz talking about Dick Zorn's kind of brought back some memories because he was the head coach at Eastern when I was there my last 2 years. So I got to cover him a little bit, and they were still NAIA and making the move up. That was a few years before they joined the Big Sky. And remember covering one of their games at Albee Stadium where they beat Montana. So I think it was like 1981 or something like that. But anyway, back to Idaho and Sac State. What's interesting about this for the Vandals, for the first time since before Jason X showed up in 2022, Idaho's playing a game that doesn't really not going to have an impact on their postseason future. They kind of sealed that last week. So the big question is, do they kind of mail it in with the last 2 games, or do they play for pride and play for jobs next year or wherever? So we'll see about that. Sac State, with their record, has something to play for, and they're obviously playing well right now with their running game, and they throw the ball off of that, and it's going to be a tough game for Idaho. And I don't think Idaho thought at the beginning of the year they would be in the position of spoiler going into this game, but very well could be the case. It'll be interesting to see how Idaho plays in this game now that they don't have any playoff aspirations.
Yeah, and it's a big game for Sacramento State. They need this win to try and get to that playoff push. I would love to see Idaho play spoiler in that one with Joshua Wood, one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch definitely this year in the Big Sky. So I'm a little bit rooting for Idaho. I can't lie, a little biased there. I'm hoping they pull it out. But overall, this will definitely be one of the games I'm checking on and trying to tune into. Let's go to Mike. Mike, Eastern has a chance to bounce back again. They've they were on a hot streak, then they lost. They are playing Northern Colorado at home on the red turf. If you're the coach going forward, are you starting Jake Shackle? Are you looking to go back to the running game? What are you thinking about this one, Mike?
Ride the lightning a little bit. See what Jake Shackle's got. I think after a game like that, there's no doubt that he has the confidence that he can come out and continue doing what he was doing. With the way that the game ended, if I'm the coach, especially with him as a freshman, I'd like to see if he is able to compartmentalize that moment and move forward, move past that, or is he going to let something like that sort of haunt him at all? I'd love to see that. It just sort of depends on the health status of Nate Bell and Jared Taylor as well. I imagine it's really more up to what's going on with Nate Bell. Jared Taylor seems to been missing MIA for most of the year. I think the thing with the Eagles for me is they just kind of they've lost some close games, but I feel like they're a little more legit than maybe their record indicates. So I'm feeling pretty confident that they can pull a win out at home over Northern Colorado.
Yeah, and I'm with you, Mike. I like the way they've turned their season around, especially like we talked about a couple weeks ago. Their defensive backs are underrated as well. It's not easy to throw on the Eagles defense, and that's what Northern Colorado likes to do. They like to air the ball out, and I think this favors the Eagles in this matchup. I'll cover one more game here, and then we'll go to Mark's Idaho State game, and then we'll talk deep about UC Davis and Montana State. Just going over the Cal Poly Northern Arizona game really quick here. I think this is a perfect spot for Northern Arizona to ride the momentum. Ty Pennington hasn't had the season I think, if John was here, he would agree with, because that was his preseason pick for offensive MVP. But, I think for the Lumberjacks, this is a chance for them to step up, try and get their way up in the standings, try and make their way to a playoff push. But as we mentioned before, Ty Diffenbach, so far, 8 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, only 1,000 yards. If he wants to continue making his name in the Big Sky, it would be quite a shock to see them win this week. But you never know. It's an impressive way he plays, and he's so tall and dynamic. I could see him carving up that Northern Arizona defense too. But the Lumberjacks in this one should have the edge, especially at home. And Mark, let's go back to Fritz's Bengals. Could win 3 games in a row, which is exciting for the program. How do you see this momentum being a big deal going for the program going forward, and playing a Weber State with an interim head coach might be a little bit of a push for the Wildcats as well?
No, it's all set up for Idaho State. I mean, to win this one and to play well next week at Idaho, maybe even win that one. That would be huge for ISU going into the offseason. That would be 4 straight wins, which I don't think they've had that in quite a while. So you never know who's all going to come back from that team or any team anymore in college football. But if that most of their skilled players have eligibility left, so if they come back, they could be a factor next year, and maybe I would definitely in the hunt for the playoffs if they take care of business. So it's a important last couple of weeks for Idaho State, and hopefully they see it that way too and finish strong.
Fritz, did you have any thoughts on your Bengals before we go to the game of the week? I just wanted to make sure I ask.
No, I think it could be a case of like they'll be one of the hottest teams in the Big Sky, and just lost too many of those early ones. And I like it when they're good. I think it's better for the league when Idaho State and Idaho are viable and not a lower division team. So I think they'll pull it off as well. And I think you have to go back to Larry Lewis era before when you have them being consistently good toward the middle and upper part of the Big Sky.
Well, that leaves us to our last game, the game of the week. I've been waiting for this one for about a month. I've probably mentioned it 10, 12 times. UC Davis travels on national television to Montana State, a huge showdown in the Big Sky Conference. Very excited to watch Caden Pinnock face off against Justin Lamson. We have good running backs in this game. Obviously, UC Davis has some defenders out with the Connors brothers, but I still see them being competitive and giving Montana State their best shot since Montana State's played South Dakota State. Let's go to Fritz here again. Fritz, where do you see an edge in this game, or overall, what are you thinking? And are you excited to watch this showdown on Saturday?
Oh, I'm excited to watch it. I still think Montana State has a big edge just because they're just playing so well. I still like Caden Pinnock. We talk about him every week. He's freshman quarterback for Davis. You guys have already mentioned the 2 turnovers he had last week. That kept the Aggies from really pulling away or putting away that game against Idaho. The guy I was really impressed with was Samuel Batu, the receiver. Seemed like every time they gave it to him on an end around, he had room. He had 110 yards in receiving. They're just really talented on offense. But, they're facing a team that leads the Big Sky in just about every defensive and offensive category. And the defense has just been really impressive. And I just think the Bobcats are a prohibitive favorite. I think UC Davis is going to wind up 6-4 after this game, but I still think they'll be inside the playoff bubble because they've had such a trying schedule.
They definitely have had a tough schedule, Fritz. And like you said, that Montana State defense has been playing the best in the Big Sky, no doubt about it. That defensive line with Eden, especially rolling the way, I see this being tough with such a talented UC Davis offense. Jordan Davis continues to rush the ball so well, and Taco Dallor is still a weapon. So I think UC Davis does have its hands full before the Brawl of the Wild. But that brings me to a huge question I wanted to ask you, Mark. Is it a factor this next week for the Brawl of the Wild that Montana travels to a 1-win Portland State, and Montana State faces a good team in UC Davis? Does that kind of factor into you for their matchup next week?
It could. a little bit. I think it'll be a tough game for Montana State, or it could be the week before the Cat-Griz game. If they had any idea of, looking past this game to next week, that would be a big mistake. I don't think they will. Plus, there's postseason seeding on the line. If UC Davis comes in there and wins, that could drop, Montana State down a notch or two in the playoffs. So we'll see. I don't think the thing about Montana State, though, they haven't had a whole lot of tough games this year after Oregon and South Dakota State. So they've kind of been just kind of munching on people for the last 2 months, and now they got 2 really good games the last 2 weeks of the season. I would probably be more impressed if UC Davis went in there and won, to make 2 road trips like that up to Idaho last week and then up to Bozeman and pull that off. That'd be a heck of a feather in their cap going forward. But I think it should be a really good game. It's kind of up to UC Davis to make it that way, by not being careless like we talked about before, and also Montana State not looking past them to the Cat-Griz game, which I don't think they will. And I don't think Brent Vegan will let them do it.
I think you're right. Vegan, has been such a great coach in the Big Sky. And I think I'm sure taking it day by day. They're not looking too far ahead, as kind of all coaches and players say in all the press conferences that I've listened to. But overall, I think, like you said, Pinnock, if he can control the ball, take care of it, we might have a closer game. If he starts getting dangerous, forcing the ball, throwing interceptions, if there's some fumbles, I see Montana State potentially even running away with this one. But, I just see the turnover side being big, and Lamson has been so efficient this year for Montana State. 18 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. So I think it's going to come down to which offense is able to, 1, establish the time of possession, and then 2, take care of the football. Last question on this game. I want to ask Mike, since he's kind of the newcomer here in the Big Sky. I kind of want to get his new, fresh opinion on this one. I want to ask you, Mike, if you have an edge to give for Montana or Montana State going forward. We'll talk a lot more Cat-Griz next week. But since you've been here for about, almost a full season, where would you give the edge to both teams? Obviously, Montana's undefeated, but then Montana State's been getting these dominant victories.
Yeah, I think, well, first off, I feel like both of them are playing games this week that are perfect for the situations that they're in. Montana coming off of a close win at home that some might argue that they should not have won. And so they get Portland State, where, you'd see this in like the SEC, where they put an FCS team late in the season, and just kind of like their tune-up game where they can have an opportunity to go out, have a big win, build some really good confidence. And then for Montana State, having a really tough challenge, and if they come out the other side, having that confidence of like, we're a battle-tested team. We've seen challenges like this all year, and we're ready for it. I honestly feel like the edge is actually leaning towards Montana State. I know that they're going to be the away team, but if you kind of look at their track record this season, ever since their first 2 losses, especially that one in double overtime to South Dakota State, nobody scored more than 17 points on them in a game. They've been dominant, so I have no reason to believe that this team can't beat Montana and go on and do it on the road and do it in a pretty impressive fashion. I think it'll be a very competitive game. If anything, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a lower scoring game between the 2.
Very well said, Mike. I appreciate your analysis there. And yeah, I'm excited. Next week, we'll dive all into Cat-Griz. I know tons of Montana fans. It's like it's our Super Bowl. We don't have a professional team here in Montana. So obviously, I think everyone's going to be ecstatic for the should be number 2 and 3 showdown. Hopefully, Montana State can get the win, so that stays true. Let's get to our picks this week, guys. John's not here, so I'll just rip off his picks really quick. He stays as the leader with 68 out of 80 right. John's had a great year so far. He's got Montana over Portland State. He has Eastern Washington defeating Northern Colorado. Northern Arizona beating Cal Poly. Idaho State takes down Weber State. And he says Sacramento State over Idaho in a tight one, which I do agree there. And then he thinks Montana State comfortably over UC Davis. So that is what John's notes are. Fritz, let's go over to you. You are in second place, but you are tied now with Mike. So I want to shout out Mike, but let's hear your picks this week, Fritz.
Okay, well, I think Montana's going to go over to Portland and win convincingly. I'm going to come back to Sac State and Idaho. Eastern over Northern Colorado. I'll pick Idaho State, my Bengals over Weber. I'm picking the Bobcats over UC Davis. I'll take NEU over Cal Poly. Eastern, yeah, I don't know why they always seem to find a guy to play quarterback, or in this case, a number 3 guy that plays really good at quarterback. So I'll take them over Northern Colorado. My brain says Sac State over Idaho, but I think I'm going to take the Vandals. It seems like they win when I think they're going to lose, and they lose when I think they're going to win. I'll take the Vandals this week.
Fritz takes the Vandals. It's kind of a theme of these Idaho teams. They kind of up and down depending on where they play. Got to shout out Mike, though. Mike, you were perfect last week and tied for second place. Like I said, let's hear what you got.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Eagles over Northern Colorado, Northern Arizona over Cal Poly, Montana State over Portland State, Fritz's Bengals over Weber State. I'll take Sacramento State over Idaho. I just feel like they're just the hotter team right now, and they're really pushing for a postseason competition. And I'll take Montana State over UC Davis.
Perfect. I think you meant to say Montana over, Portland State. You said Montana State. Just wanted to make sure.
Yes.
So, no, perfect. Mark, you are 63 out of 80. Go ahead.
Well, I'm going to, I'll start out by taking Eastern over Northern Colorado. And I'm kind of curious to see going forward of Eastern, how they go directionally with their offense. Do they go with a passing quarterback, or they stay with the running quarterbacks they've had the last couple of years? It'll be an interesting little philosophical decision that Coach Best has to make in the next weeks, years, and stuff like that. But yeah, Eastern over Northern Colorado. We'll take John and his Cats, Northern Arizona Lumberjacks to beat Cal Poly. I'll take the Grizz to win at Civic / Multnomah Stadium / Providence Park over Portland State. We'll take Fritz's Idaho State Bengals to beat Weber. And as much as I want to see Idaho win this one, I'm going to take Sacramento State at home. I think they got a little bit more to play for, and they're not going to let it get away, especially to build some momentum toward their future FBS power seasons and stuff. And then lastly, we'll take Montana State to beat UC Davis.
I'll finish it up here, guys. I am still in last place, so I'm going to go a different direction to try and get maybe a push for second place. I don't think I'm able to beat John, so I'm going to take Eastern Washington over Northern Colorado. Give me Northern Arizona to beat Cal Poly at home. Montana to defeat 1-win Portland State. I like Fritz's Bengals a lot this year, but I'm going to go with Weber State with the interim head coach push. Sometimes I think that does matter with the new leadership in the room, and I got to make some room on these picks, so give me Weber State. The next one was very tough for me, as you guys have been going back and forth about Idaho and Sac State. So I'm going to go with Sacramento State on this one. I really wanted to take a hungry Vandal team, but the way Sacramento State's been playing after their loss to Montana makes me think that the Hornets are going to win. And finally, for the game of the week, I'm actually going to take UC Davis on this one. I know Montana State looks like the better team. I think this is a chance for UC Davis to make a huge push in the playoff rankings. If they want to go far this year, this is a big game to them. It's going to be a huge uphill battle, and like I said, I need to get some games right, and that's going to be my prediction. But that's all the time we have today, everyone. So I want to thank my panel first for being here, like always, on time. Great talking with you guys. And if you have any comments, please leave them in the discussion below. We would love to talk to any of you about it, especially with Cat-Griz coming up next week. Feel free to give some predictions. But until then, we will catch you next time, and thank you for watching this podcast.
M&C Tire in Kalispell has been locally owned since 1979. From urban avenues to untamed trails, M&C Tire will help you conquer any terrain. Unleash the power within your ride. Stop into M&C Tire at 1271 North Meridian Road in Kalispell or mnctire.com. M&C Tire, wherever you go, we've got you covered.